Breaking news right now on the unprecedented Trump FBI raid. The Department of Justice is asking to keep the affidavit sealed. Now, that's the document that would give the underlying reason on how the feds are able to obtain the search warrant. And that comes as President Trump levels new accusations of FBI overreach. Quote, "They stole my 3 passports, 1 expired, along with everything else. This is an assault on a political opponent at a level never seen before in our country, third world exclamation point." Trump also claims he had a standing order that allowed him to declassify documents as soon as they left the Oval Office, and says the FBI took documents protected under attorney-client privilege. Now, that comes as a growing number of Republicans are calling on the Justice Department to release the affidavit that Attorney General Merrick Garland used to sign off on the search warrant. Former federal prosecutor Andy McCarthy says there's more to the raid than what the feds have indicated.
What I thought they were up to here was basically trying to do a fishing expedition to see if they could find information that's relevant to the Capitol riot that might help them make a case arising out of January 6th. And looking at the warrant, I think that's exactly what it is.
Meanwhile, the White House continues to claim ignorance of the raid.
We do not interfere. We do not get briefed. The Department of Justice, again, when it comes to law enforcement matters, it is independent, complete independence. And I'm just not going to comment on that. None of us will, because we're going to let Merrick Garland speak for himself. We have learned about all of this the same way the American people have learned about this.
It's an interesting thing. I've opined that I think that it would have been reasonable and smart and responsible for there at least to be some sort of communication from Justice Department to the White House. They're claiming that's not how they're going to do things. They say they didn't know. And I just wonder, if that is going to hold Dagan going forward.
It shouldn't hold. Every sober-minded American who cares about this country and the disunion that is gripping it understands the Justice Department and the the FBI, and even the White House, they need to show what necessitated and justified this raiding and searching of a former president's home. It's never happened before, period. And the reason needs to be extreme because the measure is extreme. Right now, it's the appearance that Garland and Wray and company, that they weaponize their agencies to go after the adversaries of those in power, namely Biden and all the people working for him. In a normal criminal case, and I've talked to Andy McCarthy at length about this, law enforcement would arrest the individual on the day that the search warrant is executed. And very often you have the probable cause of a crime, the arrest warrant and the search warrant use the same affidavit. But I don't think, and I could be wrong if the judge rules differently, I don't think that the affidavit and I don't think any of the evidence that was collected will ever see the light of day until there's a January 6th indictment. I don't think it's going to ever be related to this document search or the Republicans retake the House and or the Senate. But I want to point out that this arrest, the timing of this raid it happened after Congress was gone. They were out on their August recess, so it was done intentionally at that time, I think, to disperse that kind of outrage across outside of the Beltway.
Well, they didn't really disperse it all that well, Richard, because there is outrage. But even though these are two people, George F. Will and Susan Collins, she's a senator from Maine, and he's, of course, columnist, not fans necessarily of President Trump, not strong supporters, but they both came out and had a similar tone, saying that there needs to be more clarity from the AG about the unprecedented nature of this and these documents, and they're urging the AG to do more. Do you think you'll hear from him this week?
I don't think we're going to hear from the AG. I think when he spoke last week, that was it. But I actually agree with George Will. I agree with Senator Susan Collins. Because of this level of outrage, let's go ahead and release the affidavit. And when we release the affidavit, I think we need to be very clear that each and every day in this country, probable cause warrants are issued, they're served, and they're processed. I mean, while it was a different court, everybody remembers the story of Breonna Taylor, who died because of a probable cause warrant and a no-knock probable cause warrant that caused her to lose her life when there was nothing. There was actually a fraudulent warrant. We now find out because of federal charges that have been filed against the officers in that case. So when we think about probable cause warrants, if we're going to be outraged, let's have a conversation about changing the system instead of just being outraged when it happens to the former president of the United States when he's holding on to classified documents.
I guess it's possible it could lead to that. Will, before I ask you your question, if you kill that fly, that's coming around here. I'm going to give you $100.
I saw it. I thought
I'm gonna
Richard
spy
was
you
having a
$100.
Mike
Why didn't
Pence
you make that
moment.
offer to me?
Richard was having...
It's because he's taller. You think he has better reach.
I don't know. I'm thinking about his reflexes.
But if
He
I
gets
reached
to
over,
fly.
if I reached over and swatted that fly that was messing with Richard, it would come off like I was swatting at Richard, and it would not go
You're
well.
not going to swat Richard.
I promise you.
We are 8 days since I guess a week tonight is when the search warrant was. We found out about the search warrant. I don't know if we actually know all that much more because honestly, it is a little bit hard to keep up with. It was these documents, then they're not. They're nuclear, but they're not. But they're this, and then they're not. And I think Greg and I were talking in the green room, like it's kind of hard to figure it out. And then it's like, well, we got to just basically, I don't know. I'm not losing interest in it at all. I'm just kind of frustrated about not having any information.
But I think it will stay in an intentionally ambiguous place, a blank slate that serves the FBI and the DOJ's purpose of finding anything. I agree with Andy McCarthy that it is a fishing expedition. We'll never see the probable cause affidavit that you referenced. I think you're right about that, Dagan. That would require specificity. And if that's the case, then they would be boxed into us understanding what it is they went in looking for. It's not truly about declassified materials or classified materials. It's not even really about the Espionage Act, which, by the way, can encompass and does in the statute very minor grievances, like not giving information over to the National Archives. Not that you're a super spy with the nuclear codes, but you just didn't simply comply with the National Archives. It's not about any of that. It is a blank slate that allows the DOJ to find something, anything, to disqualify Donald Trump from running for president. Either disqualify him in a long, drawn-out legal case that ends up at the Supreme Court, or simply in the American public's mind. And if that's the case, to your point, Dagan, it better be egregious. It better be more than the nuclear codes, which, let's be real, change when an administration changes. It better be egregious.
They change regularly, right? I was kidding the day that I said that about nuclear codes. That's not like you don't write them on a scrap of paper.
I do.
But Greg does.
That's why you don't have them, Greg.
Your nuclear codes are having to deal with something else.
Yes, that is true.
Do you want to hear from Bill Maher?
Sure, why not?
Let's hear what he had to say.
Trump, he did sell his soul to the devil because he is the luckiest man in the world. His fortune was finally falling. DeSantis was beating him in the polls. You know who hates this more than anybody? DeSantis.
Yeah.
DeSantis, like, I had this in the bag, and now I got to run against President Martyr. And this is saving Trump politically because now, of course, all the Republicans, what do?
Of course, talking there to our friend Piers Morgan.
There you go, our very own Piers
Very own,
Morgan.
that's true.
There's truth to what he's saying. No matter how you feel about Trump, and Bill Maher can't stand him, he's a larger-in-life figure, and you just create more folk hero status the more you target him. He understands that. He's like a black hole that swallows all negative energy. And the angrier you get, the better it works. How stupid was this? It's like found money for him. Right? This raid is found money. He doesn't have to do anything. He could just pull back and just let this play out. He already looks like he was the victim here. Meanwhile, of course, they're going to work around the clock trying to find stuff about it. But it's already falling apart, I think. And I think we were seeing it fall apart towards Friday. The tell, for me, was if you criticize the political nature of this raid, it was tantamount to hate speech. And they do this before. They did this to, like, if parents said, hey, look, I don't want to have gender experts talking about gender politics with my toddler. It says, well, you know what? You're putting trans people in harm's way. Or if you say something, you're at a school board meeting, you say, look, I don't think CRT should be in schools, and I don't think this shutdown is working in schools. Well, you know, you're a domestic terrorist by saying that. So what they try to do is they try to shut you down by saying how you feel and the anger you have is somewhat harmful. That was the tell that this was over. Of course, they never did that. They never cared about the Border Patrol. That's the best, you know, when they talk about defending law enforcement, they actually put a target on Border Patrol. And then when they were found innocent, they still decided to punish them. So all of that hypocrisy means nothing. You should be okay criticizing the FBI, including FBI agents who are criticizing him. The final tell, though, is that now they're just saying, you know what, maybe we'll never know.
Right.
And what they're trying, that's the kind of the tell that they use with Hunter Biden. You know, maybe this thing's real after all, you know, but we already won the election. It really doesn't matter. So they wait until it doesn't matter anymore. And then they come up with okay, let's not talk about it. It's what people do when they're married. It's like, okay, let's just not talk about it. You win.
Yeah, that's usually I always win.
Yes.
No, kidding. I don't. No, maybe I do.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.